is such an honor to be here tonight in front of you with, of all people in the world, Peter Lawson-Johnston. Thank you. May I call you Peter?
Please do.
Okay, great.
That's a very generous comment about my being here. Thank you.
Well, I just have to say, a long time ago, I worked for Burt Reynolds, and we had Dolly Parton on stage with us once, and she required some special steaming of this garment that she had, and so I was steaming her garment. My hand was up Dolly Parton's dress, and I thought, oh, who would ever in my lifetime believe this? But Peter, I gotta say, I think with our backs to this audience and my hand in your pocket right here, that might beat that night.
They didn't know. I don't think they knew what we were doing.
So we've met a couple of times. The Cultural Conversation series is, it's better than a lecture, I think, because it gives us the chance to have a give and take. And with any luck at all, I'll get to ask the questions that you might have thought of. In the end, we'll see if there's time. We might end up taking questions, but on the other hand, you might need a hook to get us off the stage before we're through. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Peter Lawson-Johnston is the Honorary Chairman of the Guggenheim Foundation. And those 4 words, Honorary Chairman of the Guggenheim Foundation, it's more than 4 words, don't count. It says an enormous amount. But, you know, I'd like to start here. You've been here with us on Jupiter Island for about 30 years?
At my age, you lose account.
Okay. But you split your time between here and Princeton, New Jersey, is that right?
And Martha's Vineyard.
And Martha's Vineyard. And tonight in the audience we have your lovely wife, Dede. Thank you, Dede, for being here tonight and for loaning him to me too, so that we could get to know each other a little bit. And how did we end up here on this stage together?
Well, we met.
We met. It's true. It's true. And I have to say, you're one of the most interesting conversations I've had so far. But it started with Jane Doggett, right?
Oh, yes. Well, the reason I'm here really is that Jane Doggett suggested that it might be interesting if I were to talk about my book. And I said, Jane, by the way, I'm wearing her tie. This is one of her ties. I said I gave the talk about 10 years ago. I lose track, but it must have been that long ago. And I'd hate to have anybody feel that they'd heard it before. So I'll try to be different, but it's still about my book, it's still about me, and it's still about the Guggenheim. So it's hard to be too different. So I apologize to those of you who heard me 10 years ago. In the meanwhile, I have heard from people who've come up to me and said they enjoyed the book, and I always say, I hope it didn't cure your insomnia.
And we have the books in the lobby. We were so fortunate to get them. Make sure you pick one up. There is a signed book plate in the front. Pretty nice. How did you become the chairman of the Guggenheim? How did that happen?
Well, it's interesting. We lived in Princeton, Dede and I, and people knew that my mother was a Guggenheim, and they would ask me what's going on at the Guggenheim. I didn't have the foggiest notion. And so the patriarch of the family at that time was Harry Guggenheim, who was quite a guy and very famous for many reasons, which I could go into you later. And I had never met him, but he was the patriarch, and everybody was scared to death of him. But I arranged to have a meeting with him, and when I did get together with him, I said, you know, I just wish you would consider putting me on the mailing list. At that time, I was on the board of Kennecott Copper and McGraw-Hill and doing fairly well in the mining business, and apparently he who had 3 daughters and grandsons, began to take a little bit of an interest in me because he felt somebody should sort of succeed him, who was younger than he was, and I was a lot younger, to sort of carry on as best someone could with responsibilities and for all the things that the Guggenheim family had going on at the time. Now, let's see, I've lost my train of thought. That happens when you're 89.
I know, I haven't though, because here's the thing. You didn't tell them that you started as a reporter, which I thought was really interesting. And this was before you became involved with the Guggenheims, with the rest of the family. And see, I would think that being a reporter would be such good experience because you'd learn how to write well and to write to a deadline. And has that served you well all of your life?
Well, it has. My first job when I got out of the University of Virginia was a newspaper reporter on the Baltimore Sun. And I was covering holdups and fires and all that sort of thing. And one day my boss said, "Do you know anything about boats?" And I said, "Well, I've seen them." And he said, "Well, you're going to be yachting editor." So I was going in a taxi cab with someone who worked for the Guggenheim, and I was telling her a little bit about my grandfather and so forth, and she said, "You ought to write a book." And I said, "Well, I've never even thought about such a thing." Well, the more I thought about it, the more I thought that with this weird background of mine, my dad had 5 wives, my mother had 3 husbands, and I was sent away to Lawrenceville when I was 12, which is the best thing that ever happened to me. And you know, I'm involved with the Guggenheim, and that's sort of different, a little interesting. So maybe I should write a book, and I did, but I had a lot of help from people who knew more about writing books than I did, but it all worked out pretty well. Bill Buckley, I was on Bill Buckley's board, and some of you may be liberal, but this is a conservative organization. And it's a magazine called National Review, and I was on that board, and I've heard they've been saying things quite lately, yes, and about the current situation for new presidents. Is that music?
I know. It was a sign, but you know what? It really was a sign. If you haven't thought to turn off the ringer on your cell phone, you might want to do that now, okay? Thank you so much.
So I hope I haven't lost my train of thought.
No, you were talking about Bill Buckley and the National Review.
So I said, "Bill, I've never written anything of any consequence except a column called Rounding the Buoy, which ruined every weekend for Dede and I on the Chesapeake Bay, covering it when we would rather be doing something else."
So wait. So you wrote a column called Rounding the Buoy. And of course you're a yachtsman now, right?
No, I know nothing about it. I remember on my first coverage of a rather important race, I was on the committee boat, and instead of saying I'd like to go below to the head, I said, "How do I go downstairs to the bathroom?" That doesn't go over well in the yachting fraternity.
And can you imagine what that captain must have thought, right? Well, how on earth was he going to look in the paper? Oh, you must have been a lot of fun.
Well, anyway, did I lose my train of thought?
No, I'm going to interrupt you. Is that all right?
I love it.
So, okay. So you were a reporter, and then you ended up in the feldspar mine. What the heck?
Oh, well, I had another dead-end job besides being a reporter. And I thought the time has come to check out how the Guggenheim family has been sort of a success. Maybe there's something going on that's still going on where I could be helpful, or maybe they could help me be more important. And there was a little company called Pacific Tin. We mined tin in the Far East in Malaysia, and they sent me out there to find out what that was all about. And then they acquired a company in the mountains of North Carolina that mined feldspar. Not many of you have ever heard of it, and neither had I. It's used in the manufacture of glass and ceramics. And I have to watch my pronunciation. It is a fluxing agent.
Wait, I think the stock just went up.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yes. Well, anyway,
A fluxing agent.
I'm embarrassed.
No, don't be embarrassed. I think it's great.
It just came out.
I'm not going to touch that. Okay? So you meet Harry Guggenheim, who is not your uncle but your cousin.
Second cousin, either that or once removed. I've never known the difference.
You know, we really need to create like a family tree. This will be so much easier. I'm so visual. And he put you on the mailing list. How long did it take for you to become a board member then?
Well, not long after that. He sort of checked me out, and that's why I was talking about my so-called career up to that point. And he started handing me, he made me business manager of the Guggenheim and put me on the board. And then shortly thereafter, he came down with cancer, and he suggested that maybe it'd be appropriate if I was president of the board. And I was president of the board for quite a few years. And Tom Messer was our director then. And then we switched, after Tom retired, to a fellow by the name of Tom Krenz. And he came to me and he said, Peter, you know, you've been president of the board for quite a long time. And there's a fellow by the name of Ronald Perlman. And if he could take your place as president, you know, this would be very meaning financially, perhaps, for this endeavor that we share at the Guggenheim. And I said, well, I'm happy to step aside. And a few years later, Peter Lewis.
Peter Lewis. Progressive Insurance, right?
Progressive Insurance had indicated that, and by the way, when I stepped aside as president, there was no chairman, but I created the position. And I had that for maybe 2 years, and Krenz said, you know, if Peter Lewis could take your place, it might be very meaningful financially for this endeavor we share. And I said, well, yeah, I think you're probably right. You know, I can't do that as comfortably as they can do it, if at all. And so it, now don't let me lose my...
So he became
So
the
anyway,
chair?
at the board meeting, when we decided that I was going to announce that I was stepping aside as chairman, I said, you know, in the best interest of this organization and all of us, I stepped aside as Ronald, and now for the very same reason I'd like to step aside for Peter. There's only one problem here. I'm running out of titles. The Honorary Chairman. I think this was many years ago that I inherited that title, and that's what I still am, and that's why I'm still involved, and that's why I enjoy keeping my brain operating such as it does.
So you would think the title honorary chair would mean that there's really not much actual involvement, but that's not the case, is it? You are involved.
Well, I am, and it's very embarrassing to me because whenever we have an exhibition, we have a new show, we have, of course, an opening night, and the invitation always has me at the top of the list with then our chairman and our president underneath that, and it makes me feel so guilty if I'm down here in Florida and I'm going to miss those cocktails up there. Anyway, they haven't kicked me out yet.
Maybe you could do a video, like a welcome video. Have you ever thought of that? I know a really, really good cameraman. No? No? Well, it's something to talk
It's a
about.
thought.
So the Guggenheim Foundation is more than just the listen, I use a word like just in a sentence with what I'm about to say. I can't believe it. It's more than just the organization that oversees the Solomon R. Guggenheim. It also oversees the Peggy Guggenheim, which is in Venice, the Guggenheim Bilbao. We'll talk more about that in a minute. You're going to love this story. And now, what's on the boards now? You've got Guggenheim Abu Dhabi coming.
Well, that's underway in Abu Dhabi. There's an island there called Saadiyat Island that was built. I mean, I think they got the soil out of the ocean or something and built this island. And what's the name of the golfer that was here? Gary Player. He's built a golf course on it. And the Louvre has already built a museum on this island. And we got Frank Gehry, who did Bilbao, to be the architect for a new museum in Abu Dhabi. Do you want me to tell them about the Bilbao situation?
I do.
Well, as many of you have heard, we were approached by the Basque government with the idea, since they have heard of us negotiating in Austria.
Oh, that's right. So there was a negotiation happening for
Salzburg.
Guggenheim there that didn't...
We were going to have talking about having a museum in Salzburg, Austria, and it was very exciting and everything, but politically it just never worked out. But the publicity was such that the Basque government, I think, heard about it, and they approached us and said they'd like to have a joint venture with us in Bilbao. And I said to our director, Tom Krenz, I said, you know, I'm not all that knowledgeable, but now I feel less knowledgeable. I've never heard of Bilbao. And he said, well, it's in the Basque Country, and I don't know much about it either. But anyway, I said, well, why don't we just, you know, we don't want to hurt their feelings, but we've got a lot on our plate here, and we'll just make some sort of an impossible demand, and then nobody's feelings will be hurt. So we said, if you give us $100 million, and that was a lot of money in those days, not that big a deal anymore, and $50 million to acquire art to put in it, all at their expense, and $20 million for our endowment in New York. That was a little cheeky of us, I think. We'll do it, thinking, oh, that's the end of that. 3 weeks later, they said, okay. And now we're called visionaries. But in all candor, they were the visionaries because it was nothing there but iron ore, and I don't know what they were doing, but it wasn't much of anything.
So how many visitors did they have in 2015 in Bilbao?
They had 1 million. And we had just a few less in New York this year. Generally, we're about 1 million each.
Wow.
So they have a lot of visitors from abroad, you know, and there were few people from abroad coming to New York this past year, and it's the first time our attendance has dropped the way it did. It didn't help the bottom line either.
You know, can we back up?
You've all heard of the bottom line.
Let's back up, because I find this really interesting. So your grandfather, who didn't collect art, was married to your grandmother who did, but she had a very conventional art collection that was in their apartment on Park Avenue.
In the plaza.
In the plaza.
Hotel.
And Grandma heard about Hilla von Riebe, a painter from Europe who was in New York, and she thought she would ask Hilla von Riebe to come and do a portrait of Grandpa Solomon R. Hilla von Riebe had other ideas. This is where I have to look, because I want to call it the wrong thing. I want to call it, I don't want to call it non-objective art,
Well,
but that's what
exactly
she called
what
it.
she called it,
Okay.
yes.
So Hilla von Ribe shows up, does Grandpa's portrait, and then what happens?
Well, I think while he was posing for her, she said, you know, you've been very successful in the mining world and so forth, and it's time you had a new interest. And I think a new interest developed with her, but even more importantly, she exposed him to what she called non-objective art. And Grandma and Grandpa went to Europe and acquired, he really did like Kandinsky and all the others, at Mondrian, all the ones that I can think of. But she really is the heroine of the story, because she did get him interested, and he became interested very much in both areas there.
So when Peter was a boy, visiting the plaza, going through Grandma's area with these beautiful, beautiful, rather conventional pieces of art on the wall, he entered Grandpa's area, and the first nude he ever saw was by
Yes.
Modigliani.
Modigliani. Yes, that was my first exposure to the nude body, really.
And he developed this interest in,
I mean, you know, that
non-objective
kind
art.
of a nude body.
Yes. Can you imagine? But bright and colorful, and after having seen, you know, landscape after landscape and lots of lovely muted scenes, then to walk in and see a gigantic Modigliani.
And Janine, you know, it's timely, because a Modigliani just sold for quite a lot of money. I've forgotten how much.
Enough to build a museum in Bilbao?
That's true.
That's interesting. You know, Peter was kind enough to give me access to the director of the Solomon R. Guggenheim in New York, and I have been in touch with his senior assistant, who's just a lovely woman to work with. She told me that the Guggenheim has 8,000 pieces of art under their stewardship now. 450 of those are in the Peggy Guggenheim in Venice. Mm-hmm. Bilbao has 200, and they've already got 200 pieces for Abu Dhabi. I made the mistake of asking how much the collection was worth, and she very nicely informed me that that was rather sensitive. Well, yes.
That's why they haven't told me. I've always said that I can keep a secret. It's the people I tell that can't.
But you know, I was doing my homework on Bilbao, and when I was doing my homework on Bilbao, and when that all transpired, Bilbao and the Guggenheim in New York had a 20-year agreement, and Bilbao opened in 1997. And I have to say, tick, tick, tick. It's almost 2017. So what's going to happen with that?
Well, you're talking about Bilbao. We have to renew that contract. And I understand we've just done so for another 20 years.
Yay.
You've got to understand that one reason we're still afloat as an institution is that we are heavily compensated for our name and our advice, and of course we do provide art for them, and if we organize an exhibition that goes from one place, we can ship it to them and to other places, and it's been a wonderful relationship, and they're wonderful people.
Peter was telling me, back to the Plaza Hotel, I'm fascinated with this. Peter was telling me that when he was growing up, Frank Lloyd Wright brought the architectural model of the Solomon R. Guggenheim to Grandma and Grandpa's apartment. Can you imagine seeing that as a child and knowing that that was a possibility, that you could actually create something that monumental for the world to enjoy? How old do you think you were at that time?
You know, I've lost track.
And so when you saw...
I mean, I was, 14, 13 maybe.
Did Frank Gehry provide the same sort of architectural model for you?
Yes.
What happens to
And
those?
also, he's
Where are
done the
those?
same thing for Abu Dhabi, although I've heard that the Abu Dhabi government wants it to shrink a little bit.
Are those a part of your collection, do you think? It seems like they should be. Those architectural models.
That's a question I can't answer. And there's a lot of questions I
My
can't
grandkids
answer.
will be playing with them. Can you imagine? His grandchildren have little Lego men that they play with. No. Okay, so now I got sidetracked. You've got a bunch of grandchildren.
10.
10. And great-grandchildren.
8.
Wow. But he's got...
I'm trying to justify my age.
You're doing great. So Dede and Peter have 4 children, and they're all involved in Guggenheim activities, which I think is just remarkable.
I'm so proud of them, and so is Dede.
I made notes.
By the way, I told you about my mother having 3 husbands and my father having 5 wives, and I could love to tell you more about that, but the fact of the matter is that Dede and I, and she hates me to say this, have been married for 65 years. She doesn't even admit she's 65.
So I interrupted myself when I was telling you about the Guggenheim Foundation because I didn't finish my list, okay? I'm going back to my list now. So not only do we have all of those fabulous locations, we've also got the Harry Frank Guggenheim Foundation, which offers grants to man's relation to man. And that would involve your daughter,
And son.
Tanya. Oh, and son. Tanya and Peter
He's
are
on
involved
that
in
too,
that.
yeah. He started something called Guggenheim Partners, so he's pretty busy with that. Been very successful in the financial world, and he is a member of these boards, and actively involved, as active as he can be.
You know, it's so interesting because I feel, when I'm talking to Peter, I feel like he's one of those rare people who has packed more than one lifetime into the same period of time that the rest of us get.
That's only because I've lived so long.
So you've got, there's still, Guggenheim Brothers is a mining operation, right?
That's always
That exists?
sponsored mining projects. Yeah.
Okay. Guggenheim Fellowships come from the John Simon Guggenheim Foundation, which promote advancement, diffusion of knowledge, and understanding and appreciation of beauty. So
I have
this is when
nothing
you
to do
hear,
with that, but it's a good organization.
sounds wonderful. When you
Yeah.
say Guggenheim Fellowship, that's where this
Yes.
comes from.
Yes.
Okay. And then I have written here, manage P.L.A.C.E, F-A-L-A-I-S-E. Am I saying that right? P.L.A.C.E? Is that Harry Guggenheim's
Yes.
estate? But you gave that to Nassau County, right, in New York?
Harry, when he died, left it to the county, yes. But Solomon, our grandpa's house was just up the road. And he left that to the county. Well, both of them left it to the county or the township or whatever it is.
Okay. And then Daniel Island is in Charleston, South Carolina.
It
And
juts
that's-
into the harbor.
Okay. So that's a huge piece of
That-
land there too.
Harry owned that, and
Now Peter's involved with that, right?
yes.
Okay. And then Mimi is the vice chair of the Peggy Guggenheim Fund in Venice.
Right.
So the kids Wendy, Tanya, Peter, and Mimi all have children of their own, and some of them have children. Are there children involved in the Guggenheim? Do you see them coming up?
Yes.
That's really exciting.
Yes, one of our grandsons is just going on the Harry Guggenheim board.
Okay, wow. So you came from, pardon me, but it sounds like you had a rather dysfunctional start. And then you got involved in, I'm taking lessons from the lovely lady in there. And then you got you got involved in Lawrenceville. They sent you to this beautiful school in Princeton, New Jersey, which sort of allowed your life to have some sort of safety.
I found out how normal people lived, more or less.
Okay. Now, according to my notes, in 1945 you were drafted, right?
I was drafted in 1945, yes.
Into the Army?
Into the Army.
Were you in college by then?
No, it was 2 weeks after I got out of Lawrenceville.
Oh my gosh. So they sent you to Fort Dix,
Yes.
and then from Fort Dix you ended up in Naples?
I went to...
Rome.
I was halfway through my basic training in Fort McClellan, Alabama, where I was trained to invade Japan. Harry dropped the bomb.
And this was not
disappointing.
Cousin Harry. Okay.
So instead of invading Japan, I was shipped to Rome, Italy. And the Army had taken over a hotel on the Via Veneto called the Excelsior Hotel. And I was a desk clerk. And my first responsibility when I got there was quite serious, that there had been an incident with a local lady or girl, whatever you call them. And they wanted me to prevent any further going upstairs on the part of local ladies. And so I asked the captain, my boss, how am I going to do that? He said, I'll give you all the military police you need. Well, I needed just enough to cover all the elevators and the stairways. And about, 2 weeks later, we discovered that they were going up in the dumbwaiter in the kitchen.
It was a small dumbwaiter. It was small. They were folding themselves up.
I was promoted from private to private first class for solving that problem. And about 3 weeks later, nobody cared whether they went upstairs or not. I hope I'm not boring you with it.
How many? I have here that you have 18 members on the foundation board. And I read through them. It's not like the who's who in business. It is the who's who in business. So I have to wonder, you get to be this age and you've served on a number of boards and been involved in a number of meetings. And I would think that would be interesting to have that many people in one room who all know how to get things done and who all have their own very strong opinions. It seems to me like you'd have a whole lot of chiefs and not a single Indian in the bunch. Are those meetings rather lively?
Well, we have now Bill Mack is chairman. He's a New Yorker and big in the real estate business. And Jennifer Stockman, who's the wife of David Stockman. Was it David? Yes. Yeah. Is our president, and they do a good job of controlling this unruly group. I think we're doing okay with that board.
That's a lot to be proud of. I mean, over and over again, I keep thinking this is such a life well lived.
Most of the people that I put on the board have retired, because I really put them on the board quite a while. There are a few survivors, but not too many.
When I first started reading Peter's book, this was one of the first notes I made. I love this. It simplified things for me so well. There's a philosophy that he brought to the board when he first started, because by that time you had experience in business. And the philosophy is this: stewardship, management, acquisition, showmanship, and solvency. And so tonight, we're doing the showmanship part. Good, right?
Yeah. I worry more about solvency than anything else.
It's interesting how that happens at so many levels, doesn't it?
Particularly with museums.
Particularly with museums.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance of protecting art and educating the public and being able to move, I think, in relationship to the changing interests of the public too.
You know what's so ironic is that there is an understanding, you know, every museum has a collection, and sometimes there are things that you acquired that you weren't all that excited about. And, you know, when the artist is no longer with us and so forth, it's legitimate to de-ascension. That's a wonderful word, it means sell. And the proceeds from that are not, it's not permitted that that money is used for anything except the acquisition of more art. And it's so ironic that so many museums are really, you know, they're fighting not to have a deficit every year and so forth. And the sale of course, when you de-ascension art, most of it is not all that valuable, but, you know, every once in a while, there's something that is worth selling for millions, and it can't be used to subsidize the operation or even some of the expense of maintaining art. It's something that's understood by the Directors Association, directors of all the museums in the United States, and it's a real no-no if you don't obey that understanding. I wouldn't have mentioned that, but
you could lose your accreditation, right?
yes, you could.
Okay,
yes.
all right.
I
Which
think
would be
you know
very
more about
serious.
it than I do.
I'm learning as I go. So
I haven't used the word accreditation in a long time.
yeah, I don't imagine you would need to. So when it comes to, I have something I'm so excited to tell you about, but it would be too early to tell you now, so you just have to hang on. So when it comes to moving with social changes, I saw where the Guggenheim had partnered with YouTube and with BMW, and now I've forgotten with something else. It's deep in my notes. But here's one of the things that happened with YouTube, which I think was so interesting. The curators in New York curated 125 YouTube videos out of 29,000 submissions that came in via the internet. And then they created an exhibition of those 125 on the sides of the Guggenheim outside. Isn't that interesting? Who knows where art is going next? I mean, it's anybody's guess, isn't it? It's always fascinating. Huh. I've been talking.
Can I tell you how I met my father?
Oh, no, I wish you would. Wait a minute. Okay, so wait. You have a stepbrother. You had a stepbrother, right? So there was you and your mom. How old were you when your mom and your father were divorced?
When I was 3.
You were 3. And do you remember him?
Nothing.
Okay. So then, do you have any contact with him?
No.
So as you were growing up, your mom married husband number 2. Is that where your stepbrother happened?
Yes.
Husband number 2. But your mom was interested in horses. Is that right?
Very.
Did she race them?
Yeah, well, raised them and bought them.
Okay. Okay. And then you ended up being raised in different locations.
Oh, yes.
So you went to different schools, like a lot of different schools, before Lawrenceville?
Many.
Okay. And then when husband number 2 moved along, there was 4 years between you and your brother, is that right?
5, actually.
5, okay. And then husband number 3 happened, and I mean, if you read about husband number 3, he was not a pleasant man, excuse me, but, so there you were.
I didn't like him too much.
You didn't like him, got it. So you end up at Lawrenceville. How long before you had any contact with your father?
After when I was in the Army, I took a very famous gentleman who was not in the Army up to his suite. And gosh, I wish I could remember his name. And Lawrence Tibbett, Dede, did you say that? You're absolutely right. Lawrence Tibbett. You know, if I wasn't married to Dede, I wouldn't remember who I was. So, anyway, Lawrence Tibbett, who was a famous opera singer, I took him up to his suite, and I said, and I was leaving him there, and I said, "Anything else, Mr. Tibbett?" He said, "Yes. I'd like to find a chap by the name of Lawson-Johnstton." I said, "Mr. Tibbett, that's me." He said, "Well, I've just come from Paris. I'm a friend of your father's, and he's very anxious to meet you." And I said, "Well, I'm very anxious to meet him, too. Just growing up, whenever I've done anything wrong, my mother's told me I'm just like him." And he said, "Well, this is where he lives, and this is his address." And I said, "Well, that's great that we're both anxious to meet each other." Well, then I got out of the Army, and we met in New York in the Plaza Hotel down in the Palm Court, and I was very nervous. And I was sitting on one of those overstuffed settees, and an elderly gentleman sat next to me and seemed very nervous, and I thought, well, "I beg your pardon, sir, who are you waiting for?" And he stood up. "None of your damn business." Awkward, because it wasn't my father. And then I saw this gentleman that I'd been told that he looked like Douglas Fairbanks, and with a mustache, and I knew that was him. And I went up to him, and I'd always decided I was going to say, "Hi, Dad." He said, "Peter, by Jove, you've grown." I said, "I certainly have since the age of 3. And as a matter of fact, I'm old enough to have a drink. And I suggest we go into the Oak Bar." And after a few of those, we really got to know each other pretty well. But he was great, and he said, "Would you like to meet Paulette?" This was wife number 5. I said, "I certainly would." And she was fabulous. So we all of us got along very well, and then when I married Dede, all 4 of us got together and all over the world in different places. So it was a happy ending.
And your
I wouldn't
father...
have mentioned it, but I knew you'd all be fascinated.
But he got to meet your children. He got to spend time with your children growing up. So
Yes.
I think that's interesting. And by that time, you had a stable life, too, which is really nice to have him come around and be a part of your family on the other end.
So true.
Are
You won't
ready?
have to read the book.
You do have to read the book. I mean, I'm just skimming the surface here. I have been in touch with Richard Armstrong's assistant at the Solomon R. Guggenheim. As I said, Peter gave me access to them. And my question was, do you think it would be possible for us here on the Little Treasure Close to maybe have an exhibition of Guggenheim works? Maybe a progressive exhibition, maybe starting at the Lighthouse Art Center in Tequesta, and then maybe putting, so one part of the installation would be there, and maybe putting another part of the installation at the Arts Council in Stewart. Have you been in there? It's this beautiful little old building. It's the courthouse in front of the new courthouse. 2 galleries there, and then another part of the installation in maybe the Elliott. And they said they're interested. We might be able to do this. I am so excited. So this will develop with time. Stay tuned. I don't have any answers. It might take us, a couple of years to work out the details. But isn't that exciting? We'll certainly get you on the guest list when it happens, okay? Wouldn't that be fun, Peter?
That would be fun.
It would be fun. And you know, there's one other thing that I wanted to say. Do we have time for questions?
A little bit.
A little bit? Okay, because there's one thing I want to say first. Hang on. Can you hold this for me, please?
Yeah.
Okay. Ready? Guess who's going to be 89 next week? Ready? I can't sing, so you have to help me. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Peter. Happy birthday to you.
It's a little premature, but not too.
We absolutely could not have done this tonight without your generosity. Thank you. And without you, Jane Doggett, thank you. And without you, Nancy, thank you. And for your board members and everyone who's involved, and for you, the audience, thank you. And it absolutely would not have been possible without Dede. Thank you. Does anyone have one question? It looks like they're making a line to buy your books, Peter. Oh, no, wait, there's a question. Yes, sir. Let's sit down again.
Was there a jury in deciding on Frank Gehry? Was there a competition? How was that decision made?
The question is, was there a jury or a competition before Frank Gehry was chosen? Here, let's sit down.
Actually, I think our director, Tom Krenz, who marched to his own drummer and had, you know, he was great in many ways and had drawbacks in some ways, and I don't know who doesn't. But he, I think, gets credit for suggesting to our mutual board. We have a board with Bilbao. Are you talking about Bilbao or?
Yes, yeah.
Actually, we've got Frank Gehry doing both buildings, so it's the same story. Bilbao, I think, was just a decision that Tom Krenz gets the credit for. And of course, I think that made Frank Gehry's reputation, not that he wasn't a hell of an architect, but that sort of really put him on the map. Yeah. And so we're so happy that he's doing Abu Dhabi. I worry a little bit. He's getting along in years, just like I am. And, you know, it started, and we've acquired all the art to put in it, but we've done the foundations or something. But the building hasn't, pardon the expression, become erect. Oh, did you laugh? I didn't mean it that way, of course. Anyway, thank you for the happy birthday wishes.